Today I'm going to review the fourth Pan book of horror stories selected by Herbert van Thal. I believe the series runs to 26 volumes and I'll show you a montage of most of the covers. Herbert van Thal edited or selected, anthologized most of them. He was a relatively famous anthologizer and also one of the first publishers to recognize Hermann Hesse. And Hermann Hesse, unfortunately, is someone that I have still yet to read. The cover, which attracted me to the book, looks like something from the magazine series Tales from the Crypt. It's by William Francis Phillips. His name is on the cover. There's no acknowledgement of his work anywhere else, which annoys me. Artists should always be properly credited. The blurb on the back matches the cheesiness of the image on the front and goes as follows. The little girl eater. Slime, the horsehair trunk. The very titles suggest the sinister, perhaps the horrible. Correct, but there are other stories too in this startling collection of beastliness, which may make your blood run even colder, may make your hair stand up even straighter. Try Various Temptations or the Ohio Love Sculpture. There's only 18 stories. The 19th piece of writing isn't a story, it's actually a description of something real but horrifying in a completely different way, and I'll tell you right about that right at the end. Looking at the table of contents reveals that I know two of the 19 authors, Ray Bradbury and Robert Bloch, because they dabble in science fiction. What I'll do now is I'll go through and I'll give a summary of each of the stories and then I'll do a wrap at the end. This is a Jack the Ripper variant where he falls in love with one of his victims. Only, does his victim understand what protects her from his knife? The pale boy has a bad habit of biting other boys at the orphanage. Mrs. Bartlett takes pity on him though and takes him home and is surprised when her kittens go missing and then her husband. And we wonder whether it has anything to do with the pale boy. Bedridden, a boy sends his dog out into the world to bring back poetic signs of what's going on outside his window. He also brings back friends, but the dog has a bad habit of digging. When one of his friends dies and the dog goes out again, he brings back more than the boy might have anticipated. This story is a variant on the psychopathic schizophrenic murderer trope, with the film Psycho being the prime example. It's Guy Fawkes' night and a despised father goes missing. His son brings an unexpected effigy of Guy Fawkes to the fire, which is set upon it and burnt. And then we wonder about what the identity or who the identity of the Guy Fawkes might be. The story gives so many clues that it doesn't come as a surprise about who got burnt at the end. Two old ladies in a boarding house are terrorizing a vulnerable tenant. Her boyfriend is familiar with voodoo and so knows what the old ladies are up to and can counteract their nefarious activities. An early example of flash fiction, well written and relying on the lunatic murderer trope. A trapped man is threatened by the rising tide. He's discovered by a very young girl who goes back and reports her find to her mother, who is having an affair with her lover close by. The lover doesn't want to be discovered and discourages the girl from her what he thinks is fantasy. A young couple move into a house haunted by the spirit of a malignant boy who falls into fast friendship with their very young daughter. What could possibly go wrong? Set in Victorian times, a man with a terrible facial deformity blackmails a doctor to help cure him or lose the woman he loves. This is a solid gothic horror, but with a rather weak twist at the end. A claustrophobic and somewhat surreal story of the dead being brought back from their graves by the tolling of bells. The atmosphere is well constructed, but the twist at the end falls flat. Gruesome slasher yarn with a supernatural psychological twist. It's a short story and doesn't outstay its welcome. This story reads like a variant of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. A crafty criminal declares himself insane so that he can get into a psychiatric ward and have an easy time of it, only to discover that the doctors and the nurses are much worse than the other inmates. A huge amorphous amoeba-like creature is washed up from the primal depths of the ocean. It terrorizes a local town until its weakness is discovered by chance and it's destroyed before anybody realizes what it actually was. A salacious premise. We have a collector of erotic art, and a clever distraction. There's now a chase between two such collectors, and then we have the unsuspected twist. This one's quite good. A man gains the ability to become invisible and is able to revenge his wife who's run off with her lover. This has a great twist at the end. Classic horror. A father becomes trapped in the railway model he is trying to bully his son into liking. Only now his son has the upper hand. A curious story that might be about a dream or a telephone with a clunky twist bolted on at the end. Herbert van Thal struggles manfully to try and justify the inclusion of this extract about the Elephant Man in a book containing fictional horror stories. It is by far the most moving piece of writing in the whole book, but that's unfair because the story is so tragic. It's a curious way to end the collection, but does remind me that was an amazing story, and actually it describes some scenes which I don't believe are in the movie, so that was quite interesting in fact. Overall, I had great fun dabbling into some horror stories. I don't normally read horror, and I must say that I've read a number of science fiction books recently, which I will hope to review, that have kind of spoilt my taste for science fiction, at least for a little bit, so this was a great palate cleanser. I didn't know anything about this series until I read this, and now I think I'll definitely hunt up other copies to get exposure to some more horror, I think. The best story for me in the collection was The Horsehair Trunk by Davis Grubb, simply because it had such a great twist at the end, which I did not see coming, and when it came, it was really a kind of gut-wrencher. And then, in terms of the best premise, I would say it's The Little Girl Eater, where the man is trapped underneath a piece of concrete on a beach, and the tide is coming in, and he sees the little girl, and he thinks that it's his salvation, but it isn't. And although the ending could have been engineered better than it was, just the premise, the setup, and the tension during the story was really well done. And so overall, I would say this was £1 well spent, and the time I spent reading it also well spent. And I will certainly look out, as I say, for other copies of this series. And if you have any interest in horror, and you like short stories, I would say this would be, any book in this series might be worth having a look at.